They say you never truly know a person until you live next to them. But I'd argue you never truly know the depths of human insanity until you live next to an HOA president who thinks she's the reincarnation of a medieval warlord. I moved into the generic-sounding Whispering Pines subdivision about 2 years ago. It was quiet. The lawns were manicured within an inch of their lives, and the property values were rising. It seemed perfect. I didn't know that the woman living directly behind me, a woman we'll call Brenda, had been ruling this neighborhood with an iron fist and a clipboard for a decade. This isn't just a story about a fine for a trash can left out too long. This is the story of how one woman tried to legally steal my backyard to build a monument to herself, forged government documents, hired a fake demolition crew, and how I, armed with a land surveyor and a very expensive lawyer, watched her empire crumble in real time. Grab a snack. This is a long one, and you're going to want to see how this ends. It started innocently enough. I work in tech, specifically in server architecture, which means I have a lot of expensive equipment, and I work odd hours. Because of this, I decided to upgrade my backyard security. I installed a few cameras, motion sensor lights, and the catalyst for this entire war, a new, high-quality privacy fence. I did everything by the book. I pulled the city permits. I checked the HOA bylaws, which were surprisingly vague about fences other than must be wood or vinyl. And I even hired a professional survey team to mark the property lines just to be safe. The survey revealed something interesting. My property actually extended about 6 feet further back than the existing, rotting fence suggested. The previous owner had just built the fence short to avoid dealing with a large oak tree root. So naturally, when I built the new fence, I reclaimed my land. I pushed the fence line back those 6 feet, enclosing the beautiful old oak tree into my yard. 3 days after the fence was finished, I was sitting on my patio admiring the work when I heard a throat clearing, sound that sounded less like a human noise and more like a garbage disposal, choking on a spoon. Ahem. I looked over, peering over the top of my new 6-foot fence. She must have been standing on a ladder, was Brenda. She was wearing a floral blouse that was aggressively bright and a visor that seemed to be cutting off circulation to her brain. "Can I help you?" I asked, putting down my coffee. "You've stolen community property," she said. "No hello, no introduction. Just an accusation." "Excuse me?" "The tree." She pointed a manicured claw at the oak tree I had just enclosed. "That is the Whispering Pines heritage oak. It belongs to the community common area. You need to move your fence back immediately, or you will be fined." I stood up, walking closer. "Hi, I'm OP, by the way. Nice to meet you. And actually, I had the land surveyed. The property line goes 4 feet past this tree. This is my tree." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "I am the president of the Homeowners Association. I have the master maps. That land is designated green space. You have 48 hours to remove the illegal structure, or we will remove it for you and bill you for the labor." She dropped down from whatever she was standing on and vanished. I thought she was bluffing. I thought, surely she can't just demand land that I legally own. I was naive. I was so naive. The next morning, I found an envelope taped to my front door. It wasn't mailed, just taped. Inside was a citation of violation. It cited Article 4, Section 2, encroachment on common areas. The edit fine listed was $500 per day until the structure was removed. I immediately emailed the HOA board. I attached a PDF of my professional land survey, the city permit approving the fence location, and a polite note saying, "There seems to be a misunderstanding. As you can see, the fence is entirely within my legal property lines." I didn't get a reply for a week. When I finally did, it wasn't an email. It was a certified letter from a lawyer, sort of. The letterhead said, "Law Offices of Holloway and Associates," but the formatting was terrible. The font was Comic Sans. I'm not joking. A legal threat in Comic Sans. It stated that the HOA does not recognize third-party surveys, and that I was in violation of the aesthetic integrity of the subdivision. I looked up Holloway and Associates. It didn't exist. The address listed on the footer was a UPS store in a strip mall 3 towns over. I decided to play along. I went to the next monthly HOA meeting. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a small building that smelled like old coffee and bleach. There were about 20 people there, mostly older residents who looked terrified. Brenda sat at the head table, flanked by 2 other board members who looked like they were asleep. When the floor opened for new business, I raised my hand. I'd like to discuss the fines being levied against my property regarding the fence, I said, standing up. Brenda didn't even look up from her notes. Violations are not discussed in open meetings. Next. Wait, I said louder this time. You're fining me thousands of dollars for building a fence on my own land. I sent you the survey. You can't just ignore legal property lines. Brenda slammed her gavel. Yes, she brought her own gavel. Sir, you are out of order. The green space is for the enjoyment of all residents. We have plans to turn that area into a community meditation garden. Your fence is blocking progress. A meditation garden? I laughed. In my backyard? It is HOA land, she shrieked. And if you don't take it down by Friday, the board has authorized the removal. You touch my fence and I call the police, I said calmly. The HOA is a private entity, she yelled back, a common misconception among Karens. Police have no jurisdiction over our bylaws. I walked out. I knew I needed to gear up. I called my cousin, who is a real estate attorney. When I explained the situation, he started laughing. She thinks HOA bylaws override land deeds? Oh, this is going to be fun. Let her try it. Document everything. So I did. I bought 2 more 4K cameras. I pointed one specifically at the fence line. I warned my work that I might need to take emergency leave. Friday came and went. Nothing happened. I thought I had won. But Brenda plays the long game. 2 weeks passed. The fines kept coming in the mail. I was now technically in debt to the HOA for $7,500. One Tuesday morning, around 10 a.m., I was on a Zoom call with my team when I heard a chainsaw. My heart dropped. I muted my mic, ran to the window, and looked out. There were 3 men in the green space. Behind my yard, the strip of woods that Brenda claimed was common area. They were cutting through the underbrush, but that wasn't the worst part. One of them was using a reciprocating saw to cut into my fence post. I didn't even put on shoes. I ran out the back door in my socks, phone in hand, recording. Hey, hey! I screamed. Stop! Turn that off! The guy with the saw stopped and looked up. He looked confused. He was wearing a t-shirt that said Joe's Landscaping in peeling letters. What do you think you're doing? I yelled, running up to the fence. Order to remove, the guy said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Lady said this fence was illegal. Said we gotta clear it for the garden path. What lady? The boss lady, Brenda. This is private property, I said, pointing the camera at his face. If you cut 1 more inch of this wood, I am pressing criminal charges for destruction of property and trespassing. Who is your bonded contractor? The guy looked at his buddies. Look, man, she paid us cash. Said it was all cleared. It is not cleared. I am the owner. Pack up your stuff and leave, or I'm calling the cops right now. The workers hesitated. They weren't bad guys, just day laborers Brenda had probably picked up and lied to. They started packing up their tools. Suddenly the bushes parted, and Brenda emerged like a velociraptor testing the electric fence. Why have you stopped? She screeched. I paid you to remove this eyesore. Brenda! I shouted. Get off my property! She marched right up to the fence line, technically crossing onto my land. This is not your property. This is the future site of the Whispering Pines Zen Garden. I have the petition. I have the board approval. Show me a court order, I demanded. You can't destroy my property without a court order. I am the president, she yelled, her face turning a shade of purple that shouldn't exist in nature. I am the law in this neighborhood. Okay, I said, stepping back. That's all I needed to hear. I dialed 911 on speaker. Yes, I have an intruder on my property attempting to destroy my fence with power tools. The situation is escalating. Brenda's eyes went wide. She turned to the workers. Cut it down! Do it now! I'll pay you double! The workers looked at me, looked at the crazy lady, and then looked at the phone in my hand. They made the smart choice. They walked away, leaving Brenda standing there alone. You will regret this, she hissed at me. I will put a lien on your house. I will take everything. Get off my land, Brenda. She stomped away. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, she was gone. I filed a report for attempted vandalism. The officer was sympathetic, but gave me the standard line. It's a civil matter unless she actually breaks something, but we'll put it on file. I knew civil matter wasn't enough. I needed to go nuclear. I sat down with my lawyer cousin Mike the next day. We looked at the HOA covenants, CC&Rs. Okay, Mike said, scrolling through the 40-page document. This is interesting. The HOA board has the power to maintain common areas, yes, but look at the financial disclosures. We pulled up the annual budget, which Brenda emailed out once a year. It was an Excel spreadsheet that looked like it was made by a fifth grader. Line item 14, Mike pointed. Community beautification projects, $45,000. 45 grand? I asked. For what? They mow the entrance grass twice a month. That costs maybe $5,000 a year. Exactly, Mike smiled. And look at this. Consulting fees, $12,000. Who are they consulting? We decided to do some digging. Mike hired a forensic accountant, a buddy of his, to take a quick look at the HOA's financials if we could get them. But we couldn't get the bank statements without a lawsuit, so we decided to trap her. I sent Brenda an email. Per HOA bylaws, Article 9, I am requesting to view the official receipts and invoices for the Community Beautification Fund for the last 3 years. I will be bringing my accountant to the next meeting to review the books. The response was silence, but the retaliation was immediate. 2 days later, my car was towed from my own driveway. I woke up to go to the gym and my car was gone. I called the police. They told me it had been towed by Excalibur Towing for a parking violation. I called the tow yard. Yeah, we got a call from the HOA President, the dispatcher said. Said the vehicle was parked on an unpaved surface and was leaking fluids. Health hazard. My driveway is concrete. My car is a 2022 model. It doesn't leak. I took an Uber to the tow yard, paid $400 to get my car back, and got a copy of the authorization form. It was signed by Brenda. That was it. The gloves were off. I sued. We filed a lawsuit against the HOA and Brenda personally for harassment, conversion, theft of the car, and seeking an injunction to stop them from touching my property. But while preparing for the lawsuit, we found the smoking gun. My lawyer, doing his due diligence, pulled the permits for the community Zen garden Brenda kept screaming about. There were no permits. But we found something else. We found a permit application from 5 years ago for a swimming pool at Brenda's address. It was denied by the city because her backyard was too small. I looked at the map again. Brenda's house was directly behind mine. If she could seize the 10 feet of land behind my house, my land, and the 10 feet of land behind her house, actual common area, she would suddenly have enough square footage to build her dream pool. It wasn't a meditation garden. It was a land grab for a private pool. The court date was set for 2 months out, but the annual HOA election was in 3 weeks. I realized that suing her might get me money, but getting her thrown out of power would be sweeter. I printed out 200 flyers. On them, I put the budget showing the missing $45,000, the proof that her lawyer didn't exist, the denied permit for her pool, the map showing that the Zen garden was exactly the size and shape of a swimming pool. I waited until 2 a.m. I put on a hoodie. I walked the entire neighborhood and placed a flyer in every single mailbox. Disclaimer: I know putting things in the mailbox is a federal crime, so technically I taped them to the mailbox post. Always follow the law, kids. The next morning, the neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Wait, Brenda paid herself $12,000 for consulting? My dues went up 20% last year for this garden? She towed my car too. People were furious. The silent majority had woken up. The night of the election meeting, the clubhouse was packed. Standing room only. There were people standing outside looking in through the windows. Brenda looked nervous. She was sweating through her floral blouse. She tried to bang her gavel. Order, order! This meeting is for members only. We are members, Brenda. Someone shouted from the back. We are moving to the vote, Brenda yelled. The current board runs unopposed. Objection! I stood up. I am running. And so is Mrs. Higgins from down the street. And Dave from the cul-de-sac. Brenda turned pale. You? You didn't file the paperwork in time. Actually, I said, holding up a certified mail receipt. I filed it 3 weeks ago. You just refused to acknowledge it. I walked to the front of the room. I hooked my laptop up to the projector. Brenda tried to stop me, lunging for the HDMI cable. But Dave, who is a large man, stepped in front of her. "Let him speak, Brenda," Dave said. I projected the map. I projected the finances. I showed the invoices from Joe's Landscaping that were actually written on napkin scraps but billed to the HOA for thousands. "Brenda hasn't been building a garden," I told the room. "She's been embezzling our dues to clear land so she can build a private pool on property she doesn't own. And she's been using fake fines to bully anyone who gets in her way." The room erupted. It was like a scene from a movie. People were shouting, "Fraud!" and "Lock her up." Brenda stood on her chair. "You are all ungrateful. I kept property values up. I measured your grass. I made this neighborhood perfect. You made it a prison," Mrs. Higgins yelled. "We held the vote right there. The result? Brenda, 2 votes, herself and her husband. The new board, 145 votes. She was stripped of her title immediately. But the night wasn't over. Brenda didn't take the loss well. 2 days after the election, I was at home. I looked out the back window. Brenda was in my backyard again. But this time, she wasn't with workers. She was holding a can of gasoline. She was pouring gas on my new wooden fence. My blood ran cold. I didn't yell this time. I didn't warn her. I called 911 immediately. "Fire emergency. There is a woman pouring accelerant on my house. She is about to light it." Then I grabbed the fire extinguisher from my kitchen and ran out. "Brenda!" She turned around, a lighter in her hand. She looked unhinged. Her hair was a mess, her eyes wild. "If I can't have the view, no one can," she screamed. She flicked the lighter. I didn't hesitate. I pulled the pin on the extinguisher and sprayed her. A cloud of white chemical powder engulfed her. She screamed, dropping the lighter. Thankfully, it fell into a puddle of mud and didn't ignite the gas-soaked wood. I tackled her, not my proudest moment, but necessary, and held her down until the sirens got close. The police arrived in force. Fire trucks, ambulances, cruisers. When they cuffed her, she was covered in white powder, looking like a deranged ghost. She was screaming that I had assaulted her, that I was a terrorist, that she was the president of the HOA. The officer looked at me. "Is this the same lady from the fence dispute?" "The very same," I said. They found the gas can. They reviewed my 4K footage, which clearly showed her pouring the gas and flicking the lighter. Attempted arson, trespassing, destruction of property. And because the fire could have spread to my house while I was inside, attempted manslaughter charges were discussed, though eventually pleaded down. Brenda didn't just lose her presidency. She lost everything. The criminal trial was short. The video evidence was damning. She took a plea deal to avoid heavy jail time. But she ended up with 3 years of probation, mandatory psychiatric evaluation, and a restraining order that forbid her from coming within 500 feet of me or the neighborhood. They had to move. Her husband, a quiet man who I honestly felt bad for, put the house up for sale a month later. But the cherry on top? The civil suit. Because she had been acting outside. The scope of her duties, committing crimes, is not covered by HOA insurance. The HOA's insurance refused to cover her legal bills. She was personally liable. We settled out of court. I got my legal fees paid, the cost of the fence repair, and damages for the car towing. They had to drain their retirement savings to pay me. The new HOA board is great. We abolished the aesthetics committee. We turned the green space into a dog park, which, ironically, Brenda would have hated. Sometimes when I'm sitting in my backyard, looking at my beautiful, unburnt fence and the majestic oak tree that is definitely on my property, I think about Brenda. I heard she moved to a condo complex in Florida. I pity those people, but then again, maybe she learned her lesson. Actually, who am I kidding? I give it 6 months before she's measuring the palm trees and handing out fines for improperly folded beach towels. Moral of the story: know your property lines, install cameras, and never, ever let a Karen with a clipboard think she has more power than the law. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more nightmare neighbor stories.